Good evening and welcome to the Yeshiva University's Career Center Strategy and Professional Development webinar series. My name is Joshua Meredith. I'm the Director of Career Advising and Technology here at the Yeshiva University Career Center. And tonight we're going to talk about ethical development of your search and career process. Just to kind of give you an overview of what we'll talk about tonight, we're going to talk about sort of at the beginning how you sort of find the career that you're looking for. And then secondarily, we'll talk about how to go about that search process in an ethical manner. Our webinar tonight will be about 40 minutes of sort of me going through some lovely slides over here on the left or your right. And then after that, I will pause for a few seconds to give everyone some time for some questions and answer. And I will stop the recording of tonight's webinar. This is a great opportunity for you to sort of learn. The Career Center will be having these webinars every Tuesday night throughout the summer to really help you sort of get ready for your career or the next semester or your internship. So please feel free to kind of enjoy tonight's activities, and we hope to see you sort of again this summer. With that said, I won't not join you obviously from the Wilf or Barron campus tonight, but I'm joining you here from my home studio. This is a new and exciting way to sort of present you information, and I hope tonight will be an enjoyable about 40 minutes to an hour, and we can sort of go through how to think about your career. So before I start, I would want to say that in our chat box is the ability to get our slides. If you haven't had a chance to get our slides, all the students received an email from me a little while ago for our Canvas page. Slides there are tonight if you're having problems with the clarity. With that said, the Career Center vision supports the leaders of tomorrow. Our students will be able to think strategically about designing their careers while in college, graduation, and for life. So tonight is sort of one of the hallmarks of our ability to sort of provide that mission statement to you and thinking about what's next in sort of your career. So before we get started with some of the substantive content tonight, I want to think about what our ethics are, right? And I'm going to provide some definitions and some sort of ways to look at things in a few minutes. But let's think about what is ethics and why? So what are we actually here to do? So every person has their own set of morals, which I'm going to discuss in a few minutes. But our ethics is a way to develop sort of the hallmarks of the understanding and analysis that we go through in making our decisions for the future. Okay, so our ethics is our ability to form a collective idea, whether you're as an individual, as a group, as a graduate of Yeshiva University. These are the ways that you sort of think about how you go about making those decisions. It's the analysis that we take sort of in moving forward. Ethics is truly the study of thinking about how we deal with problems and how we go about potentially solving them, providing rationale for sort of the decisions that we make, and being able to essentially explain why we made that decision. It's a way of stating and looking at a problem from a different perspective, one which you can back up in many different kinds of scenarios. When I teach my classes, a lot of what we discuss in ethics is sort of, what we discuss really is how to sort of formulate a problem and how to sort of look forward through it. It is really the ability to sort of look. This slide says at the bottom, get you to look at your problem from a different angle. So this is really quite key for me in our development. I want you to look at sort of things that you may have thought about before from a little bit of a different perspective. So that's really what we're defining with our ethics tonight. That's why we're really here, right? To really think about how we go about sort of meeting all the goals of both our search process and then actually going through and defining what our ethics is. So ethics, to just sort of give you a baseline sort of understanding, is a set of rules which we apply to anyone, whatever their sensitivity or experience to discover the right answer. Ethics is not your morals. and it's something very different. So let's define the term morals first. For a lot of YU students, morals are developed at home and through religious study. For graduate students, you may have developed a lot of your morals, again, through home, through whatever religious study you may have developed, from relatives, from undergraduate university. These are really the abilities of all the things that go into making up your character. That really is an interesting piece of sort of what we're working on here tonight, and a sort of interesting way to think about it. Everyone's morals are slightly different. No matter where, if we've shared the same community, or we've shared the same the shul, or we've shared the same dormitory or class, everyone's morals look a little different because they are shaped by family, by experiences, by the way we think about the world. Everyone's morals are quite different. Even those slightest, even people who may live next to each other and spend their entire lives together, their morals will look different. So in the ability to sort of remove your morals from the picture just slightly is the ability to really think about this from an ethics perspective. Okay, and now talking to just our YU undergraduate students, I'm here for a minute. You are developing sort of a lot of different school trains of thought through your sort of religious study that's coupled with your secular studies, right? But let's talk about your Torah studies and your religious studies just for a second, right? There are morals and values that you're developing through that. What I'm hoping to sort of add on to that tonight is the discussion of ethics, right? So we set the ability to complete an analysis in a way that will enhance sort of the rules, but also potentially look at sort of how we deal with things as a person that gets away from a baseline standard of just what I think, right? Ethics can be applied to large groups, right? And large systematic problems, which is why we study it so inherently, right? And why it's so important to us, because as me, Joshua Meredith, I can come and teach a class here at YU in the fall, and I have my morals on how I want to develop sort of my curriculum for the class and everything that may go around that, but that's not my ethics. My ethics is something that's developed for all of the faculty sort of at YU, for all of the people who go there, for all of the students, right? It needs to be not uniform, but it needs to be overarching and broad. And that's what we're really looking to develop. So it's that experience that we can then share together, right? The analysis that we can do as a collective. And part of that will also be how you develop your own personal ethic compared to sort of everyone else's as well. So first, how do we define a career path that's best for us? Okay, I think this is really interesting because we as a people, we as university students, people who work or will work in professional and non-professional fields, we have to develop our own sort of career path in its whole, right? There are a number of different ways that we can go, as you can see by the lovely sort of sign that's provided here. So development of what we want to do and how we want to go about that, I think is a really interesting way for how we sort of we start, right? Because if we don't start with a strong ethical base, one that we can really prove to ourselves, we won't be able to move forward with a path that really is ethical for everyone, right? And at some point, you may end up making yourself or others quite miserable because of it. And it may not be the right choice. So we want to start on good footing to develop that career path that really fits sort of what we're looking for to get out of sort of our career. So to give you sort of a personal anecdote from my own career, I was trained, I've had a number of different careers in a short amount of time because I was really looking to find the space where I could really use sort of my ethics and morals and really combining them together. So what I decided to do is when I got to college, I really, really wanted to be a journalist. That was really my passion, right? I was a writer. I loved to write. I loved to follow a story, whether I was a sports reporter, I covered music for a time, I did regular news, I did financial news. I really had a broad base in sort of a reporter. But when I got to the end of college, not only there were market factors, but it also felt like something had stalled at sort of where I wanted to go with that part of my career. So I decided many years ago that I would go to law school, and I took ethics is often called the study of putting your morals and the laws, and ethics sort of sits in the middle between the two of them. So we have to we find our path through sometimes trial and error. I went to law school. I did not love the experience of studying the law, to be honest with you. However, with that said, I took an immense amount of value in what I was learning. The process maybe I didn't love, but what I was getting was a set of skills that I could really use for the rest of my career. When I graduated from law school, I worked at 2 different firms here in the state of New Jersey, where I'm located now, just over the bridge from where we usually have classes in New York City. With that said, I took a firm where I was working in commercial real estate, and one of my jobs was to make sure that tenants paid rent or to potentially evict tenants. And it hurt every day at the end of the day to go home knowing I had just helped remove someone from their home. It didn't fit what I really wanted to do as a person. It was a paycheck, and sometimes the paychecks were great. Sometimes I really enjoyed sort of some of the legal work that happened, but the moral part of me couldn't live with a lot of what we were doing. When that didn't equate, I couldn't match it up with the ethics that I had built for my own life. So I decided almost 7-8 years ago now that I would go for a different path, and I entered higher education. And now all these years later, I get to present to you lovely Yeshiva University students. My path, like this mountain trail, was not linear. It was not straight up the mountain. It went side to side as I found a place, as I started to equate my ethics, right, my own personal ethics, with that of sort of someone looking to make a career for the rest of their life. Now, I think I found it after all of these years, and I really enjoy working at a university and teaching lovely students like you, but it was not so easy to sort of find that path at the beginning. Excuse me. Finding your path, right? Finding that balance, it can really be a balancing act, okay? There are a number of things that we think about when we really look sort of towards where our career is going, right? One of them might be we're worried about our salary, right? I have to make a living, right? I have to be able to provide money to pay for an apartment or pay for a house, or pay off student loans or whatever it may be, right? We have family obligations, right? For many students who may be looking to start a family or have a family, right? We have to pay. There are certain obligations to make a career and sort of work for that. There's external pressures. There's family, there may be friends, there may be advisors who are really pushing you in one direction of what they think your career should become. Maybe that equates to number 1 and number 2, family obligations and salary, but with that, really that external pressure definitely exists. For many of you, you may be in a major where there's sort of a set path, okay? So just for an example, a lot of political science majors go to law school. A number of biology majors will end up in medical school. Some students in accounting will end up as accountants, right? There's that set path. And what I'm trying to impress upon you today is that part of this is sort of finding, matching the balance with the things here on the other side. What are your personal and professional desires? Okay, what do you want to do with your career? What do you want your career to look like? Right? What's the best fit for you? I found that over time, talking to people, talking in front of students was the best fit for me. What is that for you? What skills does it match, right? I talked to a number of students here at Yeshiva University and other institutions I've been at about wanting to give back to their community. During this unprecedented time of a global pandemic, I think this is incredibly poignant for now, right? We want to give back. We see people daily, first responders on the front lines, fighting the virus, right? Trying to save people's lives, trying to get people fed, trying to make sure essential services go on. And that longing to give back, I think, is key. When I talk to students here at Yeshiva, I see that through your ability to go work at camps for students with special needs. for the ability to give back in their communities, to give back to the elderly, to give back to the homeless. These are really quite values that often don't match up with some of our desires on sort of the other side of the coin here, right? And then finally is our interests, right? You know, I came to YU. I wanted to get ahead, so I got into a major that I don't really love. My interest is in XYZ, right? So all of this, right, is sort of us finding a space to balance sort of our career interests and sort of everything that we've talked about into one. And how we do that really is by by using ethics as a primer for this. Okay, so really the key driver that we need to understand is that we will build an ethic upon one another, right? So I want to go over a couple of different theories here that we use as primers, okay, to help us make our decisions. One of the things that goes on in ethics is we look at all these different great ethical theories, okay? And in the ability to do that, we have to look at sort of who we are as a people, okay? And this will allow us to sort of build upon everything that we're doing at a whole state, right? So we're working to really build these theories upon one another to develop sort of our own cultural, moral ethic together, right? When we have that overlap, when we build those bridges, it's really quite key for us. So utilitarianism, right, I think is one of the most interesting and important parts of sort of ethical theory. And it really, really is key for us developing. The concept of utilitarianism is doing the most amount of good for the most amount of people. Okay, so this is the person who forgoes maybe the great career in finance to become a nurse, or someone who could be that's one example. One or the other side of the example is someone who goes into investment banking to help nonprofits invest their money better. Okay, so it's really right. There's that push and pull. So when we think about utilitarianism, what in our career will do the most amount of good for the greatest number of people, right? And those people can be any unit set that you set it to be, right? So that's really interesting. It could be society as a whole, which is very large, right? Which I wouldn't do, right? It could be your peers, okay? So it could be your family. You can really develop sort of what that societal sort of group is based on your understanding. Next, I want to talk about two theories that I think sort of go together, right? These are the classic ancient Greek sort of man and woman interior theories, right? Hedonism and egoism, right? Or here, hedonistic and egoist virtues. Okay, so hedonism is the ability that I'm going to do the thing that makes me sort of at the best stage, right? It puts me in the best light. That's the classic hedonist, right? And then the egoist is someone who is, I want to do these great things for myself, right? So I enjoy these things. I want to continue them. I think that's important here, right? We often, at times, because we are looking at sort of all the factors, we're looking at so many pieces, so many external forces that we forget what we want. You know, we often take the advice, and I'm going to be honest, because you're college students, would take the advice of our parents, right? We sit there and we have sort of a conversation at the dinner table, right? Which many of you are probably experiencing right now because you're all mostly at home. We have that conversation at the table, and we say, you know, and mom or dad or grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, whoever you may be living with, comes and says to you, I really think you should become a lawyer. I really think you should become a doctor, right? And because that will do the most amount of good for maybe everyone, okay? And in terms of that, we don't really set sort of how we think about how we move forward, right? So that's taking someone else's sort of understanding of what we should become and not us internalizing what we want to do, right? What really will make us happy? What's going to bring us joy? And obviously this is a balancing act, right? A career is a multifaceted thing, right? It's a combination of the thing you're interested in, the thing you're good at, the thing you have skills in, the thing that pays, the salary that you're looking for. You know, some people will be happy with a salary that doesn't change very often. Some will look at sort of salaries that change. These are all sort of important pieces of everything that goes on. Next, I want to look at sort of a business virtue. Okay, business virtues sort of sit and sort of state that we should be a stakeholder, okay, in whatever we are doing. And stakeholder theory is really important because there are a number of stakeholders that sit within our lives, right? It may be a family member, it may be a spouse, it may be peers, it may be someone else. And these are really, really quite key in developing sort of our ethic, okay? This is a major piece sort of what we're working towards. And I really do think it's very important as we sort of move forward down the road. So that's a big piece of sort of what we're working here. We build those theories, right? And I can't take you down the road of us doing the analysis here tonight. But part of this is to sort of give you the ideas that this are the things that we need to look at when you sort of move down the career road, right? And right now, for many of you, we're looking at job number one, right? It's your entry point into the professional realm. And that's an incredibly important piece of sort of everything that's going on here. The process of determining our own ethicality is not a black and white standard, okay? But more of bringing multiple pieces of thought together, analyzing from not only our own viewpoint, but the collective, and even that of others. Stringing together those multiple ethical viewpoints help us find consensus, right? It helps us take and make the vision clearer, okay? When we do that, when we build upon sort of an understanding of what we need to do, right? Looking at it from each different person's perspective in our potential life, okay? Or in society as a whole, whatever group we define, okay? These are quite key in sort of how we develop sort of as an ethical society. It really is the key driver for us, right? When you process things from multiple perspectives, that really leads us to make stronger decisions that have better foundations, okay? When we are building things from a better foundation standpoint, right? Rather than just saying, I really want it, right? Or this pays the most. Or, well, this is the thing I've been training for, but, you know, I don't love it, but I'm going to still do it. You know, these are the kinds of things those are kind of decisions that don't really sit on a firm base, okay? Our goal is to really make that firm base sort of exist. When we think about this, I want you to think about this from the ability of a decision tree, okay? Using ethical principles in defining your career path is a process which allows many branches of thought to form a single trunk, but it also allows us for many options, right? Branches form that trunk, but branches also lead to a lot of different either flowers or leaves in some cases, right? And those are sort of all the opportunities that we need to develop, okay? When we start really thinking about our decisions from multifactorial standpoints, right? So I want to do X, right? I think that'll be good for Y. I want to do the most amount of good for the people in my life. And I think that this career will fit that goal, right? I think that's the way to sort of build upon sort of a career. You do not need to stay and sit in the career that maybe it was picked for you. Or maybe the career that you're going down, maybe you're not ready for that, okay? Or maybe it's not the thing that you love, or you found something midstream that you picked up. As someone who's had 3 different careers already in a very short amount of time, a short time span, part of this is really developing that, developing the ability to say, hey, I'd like a change. Part of it is also developing skills while you're going down the road that could be multivariable or multi-use, okay? And I think that's really quite key in sort of how we develop sort of our ethic overall, okay? The ability for us to really pinpoint things that we can do and how we build on that from an ethics perspective is really, really quite key. When you look at this tree that I found in Galilee, in Israel, right? This tree looks firm, right? It looks like even if a storm came through, it wouldn't come out of the ground, right? Those trunks lead to roots, and when our ethics take roots, they build up to make strong trees, okay? And that's what I really want for your career, and I know that is a very extended analogy, but your career needs to sit on sort of an ethical root that takes place deep within you, right? You've thought about this. You've taken the time to really state how we're going to move forward, how I'm going to move forward as a person. And that really is quite important. Okay. Achieving balance in thought, okay? We can achieve balance because one of the keys is constantly be evaluating our path and making sure it aligns with our analysis. Now, when I was a younger man, I could have said, I'm just going to stick this out, okay? I'm ready to just move forward, okay? And I really think that this is a good way for me to sort of set what I need to do, okay? And it really allows our ability to sort of go forward with analysis, okay? And I should just stay on the path, and I shouldn't reevaluate all the time. And the reevaluation is perfunctory. I'm already in this. Let's stay. I don't know that I'd be with a place where it made me happy. That would have made me the ability to have a better career if I wasn't constantly doing that balancing act, right? If I wasn't looking at where my heart, right, my heart is and where my brain was, and sort of thinking about the two as a whole, right? I like this little man because he's lost two important organs, but also he doesn't know how to balance the two out, right? And I think part of that is maybe he isn't relying, this doesn't say ethics right here, right? And I think that's really key, right? If you begin to look at sort of what will make you happy, what will sort of bring you joy, what will lead to the greatest potential economic success for you, where your skills are best going to be evaluated, that really is the struggle that sort of exists, okay? And you need to keep working towards sort of constantly reevaluating your ethics, constantly thinking about, am I helping the most amount of good? Am I doing what I want? Am I the key stakeholder here? Am I being true to myself, right? Am I being true to my profession? Am I being true to my business or my employer? All of these things really make up sort of how we achieve that balance in ethic. So now that we've discussed how to sort of begin the sort of ethical process, how do we go about a search in an ethical way? And I think this is a question I get from students all the time. I'm weighing 3 offers. I'm talking to 4 different firms. I feel like I'm leading people on. Am I leading people on? These are all interesting questions that we've all sort of thought, right? Well, I'm interviewing with 2 employers, like I'm telling them that they're the top, both of them that they're top choice. Well, is that ethical or not? Part of this is we have to develop a roadway, right? We have to get on our yellow brick road here in order to move forward. So the search process often brings us to new unforeseen challenges of our morals and ethics and how we can stay true to both of these during the process, right? So not only are our ethics potentially being strained, right? Am I doing the right thing here? I've looked at it from several different angles and it's very unclear, but also I'm feeling morally that this is a problem. This is where we really need to sit with sort of the information that we have, right, and really think about how we move forward, okay? So really, that is how we sort of state how we sort of think about this, right? So how do we build an ethical search, okay? The divide in the search process is what brings us such ethical conflict to the surface. The divide exists because we are acting in our own self-interest, the act of acquiring a job, and the overall landscape of the market, others who may be also vying for the position, or the employer looking to fill the role, okay? To be ethical during this process, we must think about the collective utilitarian theory, right? How others would react in similar situations, Kantian ethics, which we're going to get to in a second, but also build in room for making sure these business interests are given weight, right? So a contractinarianism sort of viewpoint. So when we look at this, let's break that down into some smaller bites, some digestible bites. I know it's dinner time, so let's think about this from that perspective. Okay, utilitarianism, right? What's the greatest amount of good for the greatest number? Now, in your world, you may define that group as my family, and the best thing for my family is going to get the job. Maybe it pays more, or maybe I'm going for a new job, or this is my first job. Me getting the job is doing the greatest good for the greatest number. The next is how similar situations, how others would react in similar situations. So are you doing something that's standard pro forma, or are you doing something that's outside the norm? Are you negotiating with 3 or 4 firms and pitting all of their offers against one another? Or are you withholding information to one firm that may be affecting potential other candidates? These are really things to think about sort of as you move forward, right? And it's an ethereal concept, right? Because you won't know you're having the Kantian problem until you get there, right? So if you think about Kant, right, Immanuel Kant, the theory is it's got to be an applicable, the thing that you're doing must be applicable if everyone was in your position in the same exact scenario. So that is really an interesting concept to sort of understand, right? It puts you in a fake world, and it creates this thing called the veil of ignorance, where you know no outside factors, but all you have is sort of you thinking about where you are sort of in the process in relation to everybody else who could be in the same thing, right? So if you think and you're able to justify, hey, well, this is what everyone else is doing. Here's I've gone and I've talked to people who've done this before. Those things really come together. And then in addition to that, they also build in room for making sure that a business interest is given weight, right? So that's the contractarianism part, right? So contractarianism on some level is understanding there's a social contract that exists between you, your employer, you and your client, you and other people, right? And that we don't go and we don't try to break that social contract, right? We don't want to break it apart. We want to fuse it together by acting in a way that sometimes, and I hate I'm going to use this word, sometimes can be thought as moral. Okay, because I think this is really, really interesting for all of us, right? Because it's a tough theory for us to sort of internalize, right? I don't want to do something that will potentially hurt others, right? And break the social contract that we have with the employer. I often hear about sometimes that employers who rescind an offer after a person has left their job. And when I hear of those, I think automatically, right? It's unethical on all 3 levels, right? It's unethical under utilitarianism because it doesn't do the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people, right? It's only helping sort of maybe the person who made a miscalculation in making the offer to begin with. Second, from a Kant perspective, if that happened all the time, right? If we were all in the original position, having all the information, and we were all there, and we were just rescinding offers to new employees all the time after they had decided to leave their job or turn down other offers, well, we have chaos. And then finally, the social contract part of this is if we were to do that, we would really, really break down sort of how society works as a whole. So with that said, that's one example of sort of thinking about this. When you get to this, an ethical conundrum, right, in your search process, and you sort of get to the place where you really need to make a decision, right, an ethical decision on how to make your next move, it's important that you weigh some of these factors in addition to others to sort of really state how you move forward. Okay, I'm coming to the end of 40 minutes here, which is really the key for all of you, because I know that you don't want to be here with me all night. There's plenty of things to watch on Netflix, and there's plenty of homework to do, and there's plenty of reading to do. So with that said, I want to just come to a little bit of a summation before we go forward, and then I'm going to give some news and notes, and then we're going to have some time for questions. Okay? Deep thought is really the key part of ethics, right? I put the thinker here as sort of our highlight on the slide because I really do think that it's important. As we develop our ethical plan, we go through several iterations of this, okay? The key step is understanding the fact that this brand will travel with us, but also affect the larger whole of society, okay? Our professional brand is not just Josh Meredith's professional brand. It's just not Yeshiva college student, Stern college student, Cy Sims college student, CAT student, whatever other part of the university you may be at. It's not that. It's our overall collective, okay, brand. It's the branding of all of us that work together or meet together or we share a connection on LinkedIn. All of that goes into sort of what we're developing. If you do something unethical, everyone who's been associated with you gets a little bit of that tarnish, okay? So when we're developing our brand, and even as it's evolving, right? Our ethical brand will continue to change time after time after time. And as we do that, we think about, right? You think about how that develops and how you build upon that to really I know that Josh Meredith is an ethical person because he's done X, Y, and Z over the course of his career. He was ethical in the search process. When he left our business, he was ethical. He was ethical the entire time, right? He thought about and went through the multivariable steps to really think about how to support us. When we're developing this ethical brand, it leads to greater long-term success rather than just that short-term gain. A lot of times when I look at where people have gone and become unethical in some way, where ethics has sort of been stripped out of the equation, or we see someone who has intentionally hurt someone, it's for a short-term gain. It's for something that they needed right now. They were trying to scratch an itch or make an urge or make an extra dollar in that exact moment, right? And they didn't think about what is 1 year down the road look like, or 3 years, or 5 years, or 10, or as far as my arm can go, right? It really didn't really sit on that, okay? What it was really important was we need to think about, okay, how we sort of develop that, not just for today, but down the road, because that ethics is going to stay with you for the entire time of your life and your entire time of your career, no matter how long that may be. Okay, some people have careers that are 5 years, some people have careers that are 30 years, some 50, some 20. It really is about the ability to sort of develop something that where you think about all sides of sort of the equation. Now, that was sort of our ethics presentation for tonight. A couple of things. Tonight's slide and video will be available at the little link. If you have your phone, which I assume many of you do, and you want to get this information, just take your camera out, put it up to the QR code. QR will take you. If you ever want to hear from me, that's my email address. My office is generally inside that building. I can't wait to return to the Wilf campus and sort of have our ability to be able to meet you all in person and chat in person. In addition to that, we have YUCL available to every one of you students. Part of my job is to make sure that your accounts are all working and active. We also have live chat hours. All of this information will be in the slides. If you need, you want to have a conversation with me about what's going on with your career, maybe you want to talk about how to develop an ethical action plan, or maybe you just need help with a resume, or maybe you want to apply to Goldman Sachs at the end of this week. Look, I get it. We offer a bevy of things at the Career Center, so that is really how we help. With that said, it is time for questions, if there are any. I can take them via the chat, so give me 1 second to just press